Shalom, welcome back. We are continuing with our discussion on the home assembly. As we promised, we want to do the second part tonight so that we can conclude on this study. The brethren had asked for examples in the Old Testament of home worship or home assembly, but I'd given at least two verses that showed that the people were worshiping in their homes, especially pertaining to the Sabbath commandment. When you look at the Sabbath commandment in the Shemos chapter 20, Exodus chapter 20, and we look at the Sabbath instructions in Leviticus 23, we saw that these instructions are given to a people that are observing the Sabbath at a home in their dwellings. The Sabbath commandment is given to people who are at home, implying that worship is done at home. And when you look at the ancient Kodesh people, you will realize that Yahuwah was calling families, or was calling a man, was calling a family, a particular family, and he would move with that family, right? And the worship would be conducted within those people that were called of Yahuwah. Even you come to Noah in his family. Noah preached, yes, to the whole of the then world, but it was his family that listened to the Besorah, and it was his family that was saved. You come from Noah, you get to Abraham, it's the same thing. Okay, before you go to Abraham, you get to Shem. Shem, who is described as the high priest, as the Melchizedek, to whom Abraham gave the tithes. When you go into the other books, into the Apocrypha books, they will actually give you that narrative, that it was Shem who was the high priest. It was at Shem that Abraham also went to be taught of Yahuwah. When Nimrod wanted to kill him, Shem ran away and was taken by the messengers, and he went to, Abraham was taken by the messengers, and he went to Shem, where he spent years there, and being taught of the Besorah, being taught of the kingdom way of life. When Abraham was with Shem, he also, we are told also in the book of Abraham that he married there. He had some wives. He had wives when he came back to Terah after he had stayed with Shem, and that's when he was given Sarah as a wife, because it is said all the wives that Abraham had, they had girl children. There was none that had a son, and so it was Sarah who was who was to bear the promised child. And even when you go into the 66 books, you realize that the 66 books will say Abraham had many concubines. He had many concubines. He had many wives, actually. That's what was happening there then. But Abraham, when you look at him, he was called of Yahuwah. And Scripture actually says in Genesis, is it Genesis chapter 4? No, that's Adam. In Genesis chapter 18, verse 18 says that, seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and a mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I know him, listen to this, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of Yahuwah, to do justice and judgment, that Yahuwah may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him. So, right there were many other people that were there, but we're not even told anything about the rest of the people that were there. Yah says Abraham will lead his own family, his own, right, into the truth, into the ways of Yahuwah. So when you look at the system of worship that is conducted in the before Mount Sinai, before the children of Yahshua, you will see that worship was conducted in a particular family. It's very, 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 very clear. The same applies with the Yitzhak, right? Yahuwah established a covenant with the Yitzhak. That we get from Bereshit 17. Is it? Yeah, 7. Let's read Bereshit 17, verse 21. Before he was born, but my covenant will I establish with Issachar, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at the set time in the next year. Do you hear that? Yahweh says he will establish a covenant with Issachar before he is born. Before he is born, right? Yahweh knows his people. He knows that those who are going to worship him, and he has a covenant with them. And you will see that the ways of Yahweh were always in the families that he had called, that he had covenanted with. And when you go to Bereshit 26:25, he says, and he builded an altar there, and called upon the name of Yahweh, and he pitched his tent there, and there Yitzhak's servants digged a well. So Yitzhak himself, when he comes to the fore, he has got a covenant with Yahweh, and he calls upon the name of Yahweh. From Yitzhak, then comes what? Then comes the two, Jacob and Esau. Jacob is the one that carries on with the worship of Yahweh. Esau was not interested. Esau was not interested. Worship was found in the home of Jacob, the one that I call Jacob. That's where worship was found. It is a family issue. It is conducted within a particular family, right? So Jacob then is the one that gives birth to the 12 sons, to whom he taught the ways of Yahweh. So these 12 sons were taught of the way of Yahweh, and they worshipped Yahweh Elohim. And when they went into Mizraim, it is the children of these 12 sons of Jacob, right? The 12 sons of Yashra'ah, who later on is called Yashra'ah. And Yahweh has made a covenant with Yashra'ah, the 12 tribes of Yashra'ah, the 12 tribes of Jacob. Right. So it's a family issue, and when by the time it gets to Yashra'ah, it becomes a nation of Yahweh. But even still within that nation of Yahweh, we see that worship constantly is shown as taking place in particular families. We never read in the scriptures that there was a synagogue at that time, that there was a church, that there was a basilica, that there was a cathedral. No, we don't hear that. The only thing that we hear in the Old Testament is that Yahweh designated Yarushalayim to be a place where you will put his name, where they will come to keep the festivals. 3 times a year, they would go there and keep the festivals of Yahweh. And of course, the people in Jerusalem would be worshipping in that place. But after that, Yahusha is very clear, right? The instruction that comes from Yahusha, it's very clear, it's abundantly clear. He says, there is no need for any one particular place to be said to be this place that's where the truth is. And he says, those that will worship Yahweh, they will worship him in spirit and in truth. There is no blueprint of a temple that you find after Yahusha. So that's what we are following. We are following that. So you can't say, you do not want to follow that instruction of Yahusha. But in the same vein, we see you don't want to do sacrifices. Why? Because Yahusha stopped the sacrifices by him becoming the only true, full sacrifice for the sins of the world. So if he is the full sacrifice, or if he has replaced the sacrificial system, he is the same one that is replacing the temple system in which sacrifices were supposed to be done. So when he has become the final sacrifice, there is no need for that place where they would need to come to do sacrifices. Is that clear so far?
Yes.
Right. Now, we want to carry on to Colossians chapter 4, right? we were looking at the examples of home assemblies in the New Testament after Yahusha is gone. So here we are being given instructions, or we are being shown how the early assembly was structured, how they conducted their worship, which is supposed to be the guide that we must follow. It's more so now when we are coming to the end of the kingdom of Ashatan. When we come to the end of the kingdom of Ashatan, it means that we have got to restore the ancient ways, right? We cannot stick to the modern, so-called modern Christian ways, because they are not in line with the ancient ways of Yahuwah, the ways that he designed for his people, because that is the ways of righteousness. And so as a people that are coming out of Babylonian systems of worship, we need to go back to the ancient ways that Yahuwah designed himself. That's why we need to copy the early assembly before apostasy crept in, before syncretism crept in, before the true worship was infiltrated with paganism. Right? This is where we need to be, and that's how we need to worship Yahuwah. We cannot worship him in this so-called modern way of worship, or in this so-called Christianity way of worship. This is not in line with the ancient ways of Yahuwah. That is why we must go back. We must go back to what Yahuwah instructed his people, those that will worship him, to how they should worship him. So in Colossians chapter 4, verse 15, it says, "Greet the brothers in Laodicea," or this version says Laodicea, "and the Numpa, and the assembly that is in his house." So again, the scriptures consistently dwell on the assembly in a house, assembly in a man's house, right? So there was a congregation in Numpa's house. And verse 16 says, "And when this letter is read among you, see that it is read also in the assembly of Laodiceans," right? "And that you likewise read the letter from Laodicea." So there are two assemblies, Numpa, the one that is in Numpa's house, and the one that is of the Laodiceans, right? "And say to Archippus, see to the service which you have received in the master, so that you complete it." Archippus was supposed to complete the service that he had in the master. And verse 18 says, "This greeting is in my own hand, Shaul. Remember my chains. Favor be with you. Amen." Then when we go to Acts chapter 16, verses 13 to 15, it talks about Lydia, a prosperous businesswoman who sold expensive purple fabric and could afford servants also, and had an assembly in her home. This prosperous woman had an assembly in her home. Do you hear that? Now let's read Acts 16, verse 18. "And on the Sabbath day, we went outside the city by a river where there used to be prayer. And having sat down, we were speaking to the women who met there." So this was an assembly outside the city by the river. And this assembly where women were meeting. And Shaul went there and they spent the Sabbath, or they celebrated the Sabbath with these women. And then verse 14 says, "And a certain woman named Lydia, a seller of purple from the city of Thyatira, worshipping Elohim, was hearing, whose heart the master did open to pay attention to what Shaul said. And when she was immersed in her household, she begged us, saying, 'If you have judged me to be believing in the master, come to my house and stay.' And she urged us." So obviously, this was maybe a social invitation. But you realize that as they socialized, worship was also conducted, and this is likely that the house also of Lydia became a house of meeting of those who had believed. And Gaius, a man of means, and had a home big enough to accommodate a whole assembly, and he generously supported the missionaries. You hear from Apostle Yahukanan in Yahukanan 3, verse 1. It says there, the elder to the beloved Gaius, whom I love in truth. Beloved ones, I pray for you to do well in every way and be in good health as your life is doing well. For I rejoiced greatly when brothers came and witnessed of the truth in you as you walk in the truth. I have no greater joy than to hear of my children walking in truth. Beloved ones, you are acting trustworthily in whatever you do for the brothers and for strangers. Sorry, excuse me. Verse 6 says, who have borne witness of your love before the assembly. If you send them forward worthily of Elohim, you shall do well. Right. Now, this is the Gaius that we find in Romans chapter 16, verse 23. Gaius is described as my host there. So Romans 16:23 says, Gaius, the host of all the assembly. So in the house of Gaius, the whole assembly was hosted. And me, so that's what she always says, Gaius, the host of all the assembly, and me greets you. Erastus, the treasurer of the city, greets you. And Quartus, a brother. The favor of our master Yahusha Mashayah be with you all. So when Shaul was writing this letter, it was very clear that he was at the house of Gaius, who was hosting the assembly, including Shaul. We don't hear of these people collecting money to say, let's build a church. Do you think they could not do that? Well, certainly they could have done that. Nothing was stopping them from collecting money to build a church, but they did not do that. They continued to be hosted in the homes that were big enough to accommodate a congregation. It may come as a surprise to some, but Constantine did not only change the Sabbath from the seventh day of the week to the first day, Sunday, but he influenced the change of the lay leadership and moved the assembly from the home into the basilicas or cathedrals. This is a Roman-influenced system. It is the Romans that were building cathedrals and basilicas for the purposes of their gatherings and entertainment. And it is Constantine who came with this idea when he started to change the worship of Yahuwah. He did not only change the Sabbath, he changed even the structure, the system of worship itself, and paganized the system of worship. In the time of the early assembly, that was when the most powerful and vigorous advancement of the assembly was experienced in those homes. That's when the Besora moved most powerfully and most effectively. If I remember well, even when you go into the SDA, it is believed in the SDA that in the last days, the Besora, the good news, will be coming from homes. There will be many homes scattered all over, right? From which the truth will be coming. And that's what the SDA believes. So now, if you believe that, what makes you think that the system that you have is functional in the Besora of Yahuwah? It is going to become useless. It might have worked in the times when there was peace, but that system of worship is not a system that will thrive in all circumstances. The only system that will thrive in all circumstances is the home assembly. Because it is in the homes that is where true worship will carry on even in the darkest hour of this earth. So from my experience in the past in Johannesburg, South Africa, missionally, the home assembly is more practical and effective in reaching out to the secular people than the institutional churches. Because I know that from experience. I've gone from door to door, right, discussing with the people the truth. And I saw that that kind of evangelism is most effective. It's very, very effective. And you see, what happens with that kind of evangelism is that at any home where you are accepted, you have already created a satellite for the desolate. So even more people can come to that home, and they will start to gather at that home, and the truth will spread. Then you go to the next home where you are accepted. Again, that's how the desolate will be moving throughout the whole earth. This is proven. We have seen it. It works, and it worked in the early assembly. And Shaul got to write that by his time, the whole earth had been evangelized. That's what he says, the whole world. So I think it is more practical and effective in reaching out to the secular world. We planted several cell groups of worship in a few assemblies through door-to-door evangelism. This showed us that door-to-door or house-to-house evangelism is very effective and penetrative. So when the time comes difficult for you to be calling a people to the truth of Yahuwah, you don't have to pitch a tent and be in the crowd and be heard by everyone. That's what you are doing. The situation does not allow that to happen. But you can go knock at any door where you are accepted. You know that you can plant the seed of truth. And once planted, it is going to grow in that particular home. And it's going to influence the neighbors as well. So that, as far as I can see, is going to be the only functional way of evangelizing the world. That is door to door, house to house. If we read from 1 Yahukanon chapter 3, verse 1, it says, "See what love the Father has given us, that we should be called the children of Elohim. For this reason, the world does not know us, because it did not know him." Right? The world will not know you because it doesn't know him. The language is very clear that it presents worship as a familial exercise. Those who are called of Yahuwah, they are called the children, implying that worship is a family issue. It's about parent. It's about a parent, or it's about the one that is to be worshipped and his children. Right? Telling you that the system of worship is closeness. The relationship that must be experienced in worship is the same relationship that must be experienced at a family level. And now when you gather in large groups, when you gather in big groups, the essence of a family disappears. Verse 2 says, "Beloved ones, now we are children of Elohim, and it has not yet been revealed what we shall be. But we know that when he is revealed, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is." The relationships in worship are, as I said, are also familial. Right? In Yahukanon chapter 1, verse 12, it says, "But as many as received him, to them he gave the authority to become children of Elohim, to those believing in his name. So, who were born not of blood, nor of the desire of flesh, nor of the desire of men, but of Elohim." They are called children because they are born of Elohim. Believers are children of Elohim, and therefore, as adopted sons and daughters, we become members of his family, who have been born again in his family. That's a family structure. That's how we should understand worship to be like. So when we are gathered, we should know that we are children of the same Father. And the way we relate, we must appreciate that we relate as close as family members. And that is encouraged only as you conduct worship in your homes, in smaller groups than in large groups of 50 people, 100 people, 200, thousands of people gathered in a place, in one place. They are coming there just to be entertained. There is no way that they are going to be relating like members of one family, because I see you for a few seconds, few minutes at most, at the place so-called a church. And when I go to my home. I don't know. I don't know you. I don't know what is affecting you. There is no closeness that you find in such big gatherings. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 19 goes on to say, now therefore, you are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the Kodeshim, or the set-apart ones, and of the household of Elohim. We are of the household of Elohim, and are built upon the foundation of the apostles and the prophets, Yarushalayim himself being the chief cornerstone. We have read that in First Kepha, in whom all the building fitly framed together groweth into a Kodesh temple in Yahuwah. So the temple is not about a building. It's about Yahusha and the believers. So Ephesians 2:22 says, in whom ye also are builded together for an habitation of Elohim through the Spirit. So the building is conducted through the Spirit. That's the building of Yahuwah's congregation. So Elohim's children are seen as his household, in which Yahuwah by his Spirit dwells in them. Romans 16:1 says, and I commend to you Phoebe, our sister, who is a servant of the assembly in Kenria, right? That you receive her in Yahuwah, worthy of the set-apart ones, and assist her in whatever matter she has need of. For she has been a great help to many, including me. Greet Priscilla and Aquila, my fellow workers in Mashayah, Yahusha, who risked their own necks for my life, to whom not only I give thanks, but also all the assemblies of the Gentiles, and the assembly that is in their house. Greet my beloved Epanetos, who is the first fruits of Achaia to Mashayah. Greet Miriam, who worked very hard for us. So it's quite clear that was the early assembly. That was what Shaul and the others actually started even in the Gentile areas. So 1 Timothy 5 verse 1 says, rebuke not an elder, but entreat him as a father, and the young men as brethren. The elder women as mothers, the younger as sisters, with all purity. So you can clearly see the way the relationships are built. We are a family and siblings with our Father Yahuwah Elohim. So we see in Corinthians, 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 25, the Kodesh assembly of Yahuwah is likened to the body. It says there that there should be no division in the body, but that the members should have the same concern one for another. And if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. Or if one member is esteemed, all the members rejoice with it. So it's like when you are a body of Mashayah, you are treated like one body, right? So one body, if it is one part of the body affected, it results in the whole body feeling pain. So what Shaul is saying is that us as members of the family of Elohim, we are likened to a body and we complement each other. One function of the body and stops to do its work, it affects the whole body. That's how we should relate one with another as brethren. If we get to that level of love, that level of unity, if we get to that level of complementing each other, then I tell you, we will have become the perfect bride of Yahusha. And the love that Yahusha spoke about, where we will sacrifice ourselves for the brethren, will be found in our midst. And that's what Yahusha is saying, it must exist in us. That love whereby we are ready to sacrifice ourselves for the brethren. That can only happen as we relate one to other as a body with complementary parts. Now, in the scriptures, it teaches us how to resolve disputes and conflicts in the body. In Matthew 18, it says there, and if your brother sins against you, go and reprove him between you and him alone. If he hears you, you have gained your brother. But if he does not hear, take with you one or two more, that by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word might be established. And if he refuses to hear them, say it to the assembly. And if he refuses even to hear the assembly, let him be to you like a Gentile and a tax collector. So you can see even the resolution of disputes. It's well pronounced, and it's well mentioned, well structured. It's the way of resolving is very effective, and it can heal, it can mend, it can bring people together. It's like you are in your own family, your own immediate family. You apply the same techniques. This works within a smaller group. This works within a people that are close to each other. It doesn't work in a group of 1,000 people. It doesn't.
Okay, brother.
Yes.
May you please speak to Exodus chapter 25?
Exodus 25.
Yes, Exodus 25, verse 8 and 9. It says here, and let them make me a sanctuary,
Yes.
that I may dwell among them.
Yes.
Verse 9, according to all that I should be after the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all the instruments thereof, even so shall you make it.
Yes.
So which sanctuary are they talking about? If we are not to build our church buildings, can you speak to this? Because this is what we normally use to support the work of building a sanctuary. Yeah.
Okay.
A church.
Right.
Yes.
I think we will go back to the same points that we raised earlier on. That when Yahshua was in the wilderness, Yahuwah told them to build a tent, right, which was a sanctuary, for him to interact with them, right. When they get into the land of promise, he instructs them, or he gives them a blueprint of the plan of the temple that was to be built at Yarushalayim, right? So we can see it's a progression from the tent to that temple. It had its time. Remember, we are saying there were not many, even for that for that whole nation. Remember, it was just one. This was to save millions of all of them. There were not many temples. There was only one that he said, I'll put my name there. Do you think they could not have built many other tents, many other structures? They certainly would have been able to do that. But Yahweh did not instruct them to build many. He said they will build one. This one temple was standing in for Yahusha himself. That's why he says, I destroyed this temple and built it in 3 days. Didn't he say that? Yes.
He says, yes, I spoke once, I think before the break, I spoke about the progression in time.
Yeah.
To say, as time progresses, things do change.
But
I think a
Yeah, but the change, brother, was the change that you are saying that are happening. They are not scriptural changes. These are instructed changes that Yah has given us. That now we are moving from a sacrificial interim solution to your sin problem. Right? Now, you, the person, you have become the temple. Yahusha is the main temple, right? Yahusha is the temple that the temple of Yarushalayim was pointing to. So you cannot have more than one, because you've got only one Savior. The temple was standing for Yahusha alone. Yah did not instruct them to build 2 temples, 3 temples. He instructed them to build one which stood for Yahusha. And so when Yahusha has died, the instruction is very clear. So we can't even go back to the New Testament and say we are using that as a model for us today. Because he says, Yahusha says himself, woman, believe me, right? You shall no more worship Yahuwah wherever place you think you worship him. But those that will worship him in spirit and truth, he says they shall worship him in spirit and in truth, not at any designated place. And when he was just about to die, he said, Yarushalayim, your house is left to you desolate. That's what the master said. And so we cannot now then start to try and build on the old that is gone, that is passing. Because remember, when you read Shaul, he speaks of the esteem of the old one, which is passing. That is exactly what he's addressing to. And when he says, this Yarushalayim is likened to Hagar, that's exactly what he's addressing to.
Yeah, so I think you are alluding to what I was saying, to say, in that instance, you say, you cannot say we are going to be worshipping at a designated place anymore. Wherever you are, you can. So that is the progression and the change in time that I'm referring to. Only maybe that I can, maybe I'm failing to construct it in a proper way. But I wanted to say,
okay,
there is that progression in time. There is a change.
Yeah, but the change must be guided by the words. You see, the change must be guided by the word. What I was saying about the change that you were mentioning was that the economy has changed and the people's way of life has changed, right? And this is what I was saying, that cannot determine our worship. But the progression and the changes that are brought by the word itself, those are the ones that we adopt. Our way of worship must not be influenced by our development, our being modern, or our way of life today, vis-a-vis the way of life in the past. That should not affect the commandments of Yahweh. But if ever there is a progression like this is mentioned in the scriptures, it's there, it's clear. Yahweh has mentioned it. So yeah, we can't adopt progression from the world, but we adopt progression from the scriptures itself.
Okay, and we also realize that on 1 Kings 8:27 to 30, maybe let me just open to 1 Kings 8 verse 27. Just one moment, I'll read there. Okay, I'm just going to read it as it is. Right. It says here, but will God indeed dwell on the earth? Behold, the heaven and heaven of heavens cannot contain thee. How much less this house that I have builded? Yet I have though respect unto the prayer of thy servant and to his supplication, O Lord my God. So here we see that also Solomon is building a temple.
Yes.
Is what you say, that because we can see that people were building temples for them to worship, even though they are saying the Father cannot be contained in a temple.
Yes, but we've dwelt on that, brothers. We've spoken about that temple many times. That's the temple in Yarushalayim. That's where Yahuwah put his name. That's the only temple in the scriptures. There are no two temples there.
Okay.
Maybe I'm not hearing you. Maybe I'm not understanding you. What?
Earlier, brother, he also distinguished between daily worship and weekly worship from Jesus.
Yes.
So I think we also need to check also whether the meetings in the temple were meant for daily worship, or were they meant for when people are gathering from different places to celebrate the feast. I think we can also just check that.
So we're saying the people who were close to the temple, who were in Yarushalayim, they could gather there. But remember, they would not get into the innermost. There was an outer court where they could gather to do whatever, maybe daily worship that they would want to do. And then on special days, they would get into the inner. So what we are saying, brothers, is that, yes, that temple in Yarushalayim is the one that stood for Yahusha. That is the one that he says, destroy this temple and in 3 days I'll build it back. And that is where the esteem of Elohim dwelt. And when the esteem of Elohim had left, Yahusha says, your house is left to you desolate. It was no longer his house. Because remember, 3 times or so, he had said, my house, my father's house, referring to the same temple. But at this very last moment, he says to them, your house is left to you desolate. Are you following the progression there? Yes. So yes, they built, like I said from the beginning, I said that Masha and David, they were given blueprint to build a temple. Just like they were given the sacrificial system, right? The sacrificial system could not be conducted unless there was a temple to do the feast. But now, Yahuwah says now the object that was being pointed at by this whole system is Yahusha. And Yahusha has come, he has died, paid for the penalty of sin. Now, the types are no longer of any use because they were standing in for the main object, the goal of the Torah. The end of the Torah is Yahusha. You get that? So when he has come and has done his sacrifice, then there is no need for sacrifice. And so the whole sacrificial system becomes irrelevant. It is superseded by a greater sacrifice, which is Yahusha. So if we can understand that that temple was specifically built to conduct, to carry out the sacrificial system, to carry out the salvation system, if we can understand that, that's what it was built for. It was an interim solution to the sin problem. But now, when the sin problem has been solved, there's no need for us to focus on it. This is the problem that our forefathers had. They continued looking at that whose esteem was passing away.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I don't know the challenge that we have to say. Can we say right now at the moment we no longer have communication with the Father? There is no more communication. What was recorded, it ends there.
We can't say that. The Father wants to speak to us, and sometimes he speaks to us. But maybe we are not just listening, and maybe we are at the wrong places. Because when you are in these concrete jungles here, they don't give you the environment where you need to meditate, concentrate, and pray as we should, so that we can be connected. Because the whole idea of connection with heaven, it has got to do with also the place where you are. So I believe the Father is still talking, and the Father will continue to talk to us if we set ourselves apart. But some of the things that we need, in fact, most of the things that we need as far as basing ourselves in the truth, that has already been revealed, right? That has already been revealed. What we need to know are those things that we have no understanding of, and are the things that pertain to our daily lives. Like now, you can't just move and then say, I am going out and stay there without consulting with Yahuwah, without him giving us directions of where we need to be. I think these issues of how we move from one place to the next, and how we should fall in the plan of salvation with regards to the events as they unfold. We think we need his directives. We need his directives. And Yah will most certainly give us the directions. He will take control of everything. And we shall soon very see that Yahuwah has taken control of everything. And he will start to marshal us in the directions that he wants us to. And Yahusha, the great general, will start to take the work in his own hands. And we will see that, we will experience that, and we will be witnesses to the effective commanding of Yahusha, his flock, his bride. We will soon see that. I don't think it's far from now.
Okay.
I don't think so. So all those things that are not clear to us, they will also become clear. I believe that Yah will speak to us just like he spoke to our forefathers, audibly, and we shall hear him speak and instruct us. So those that think that Revelation has ended with the scriptures, I think they don't know what they're talking about. Yahuwah speaks to his people even today. He reveals himself even now. And he is going to speak even more audibly, just like he spoke to our forefathers on Mount Sinai. I believe that. That's what the scriptures tell us. And we shall see things. We shall have visions, more vivid visions. We shall even dream more vivid and clear dreams. We shall hear the instructions of the Most High, even in our dreams. We shall, if we are not yet hearing them. And some are already hearing. Yahuwah instructing them things that pertain to their own lives.
Yeah.
So Yah is talking. He is talking to his people. And he is giving us wisdom to understand that which is written. Things that we didn't understand 10 years ago, they are becoming more and more clearer by the day. So our understanding of what is written, or our understanding of the truth, we cannot even say it is because we are so clever and intelligent. It's Yahuwah's spirit that is leading us to that understanding, to that revelation, to that enlightenment. So if we can't see the work of Yahuwah in our lives, I think we are very much disconnected. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Maybe it's might be also a subject of another day on its own.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we can move on to maybe I don't know, maybe concluding remarks on what are we saying about.
I haven't concluded yet. I haven't finished. Are you not going to allow me to finish my study?
No. You can finish. I wanted to get to a point where we say, okay, what are we saying about? Remember the question that we asked before the break.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think let's allow me to finish, and then we can then have that conclusion.
Okay.
Yes.
No, it's fine.
Yes. Right.
You can
Okay. Let's look at the practices and the advantages of home assemblies, because we've already established that the early assembly, according to Shaul, it was done in the home assembly. So let's look at how they conducted themselves in the early assembly. How did they practice worship, and what are the advantages of home assemblies? In 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 4, it reads, For out of much affliction and anguish of heart, I wrote unto you with many tears. Not that you should be grieved, but that you might know the love which I have more abundantly unto you. Verse 5. But if any have caused grief, he has not grieved me, but in part, that I may not overcharge you all. Sufficient to such a man is this punishment, which was inflicted of many, so that contrariwise you ought rather to forgive him and comfort him, lest perhaps such a one should be swallowed up with overmuch sorrow. Wherefore, I beseech you that you would confirm your love towards him. For to this end also did I write, that I might know the proof of you, whether you be obedient in all things. To whom you forgive anything, I forgive also. For if I forgave anything, to whom I forgave it, for your sakes forgave I it in the person of Mashayah. Lest Hashatan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. So, because of these values, the values of forgiving one another, loving one another with this much intense love in the assembly, because of these values and fellowship which the early assembly experienced in a mighty way, the early assembly in the homes was able to defy the influence of the decadence of the Roman civilization. They were coming at a time when the Roman Empire was at its worst morally. Remember, homosexuality was thriving in this time of the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire actually got destroyed because of the wickedness, or it got divided because of the wickedness that was being done in it. And one of the wickedness that was being done was homosexuality. And so there was that decadence of Roman civilization, which was affecting even the worshippers of that particular time. The home assembly would rise above all these situations, and people were empowered. But you will see that in that setup in the home assembly, there are no elites in this worship as is found in institutionalized religious systems of this world. There were no elite like what we have now. Academic qualifications do not determine or qualify you to do the work. It must be a calling, as far as the early assembly was concerned. You did not need to go to a university, spend 3 years to study theology so that you may have the calling of Yahuwah. You see, that's why when they heard Yahusha speak, they said unto themselves, but he did not go to any school, but he speaks with the power and authority. Right? They were amazed. They were amazed. So, you see, we take from that. If indeed you have got the spirit of Yahusha, you do as he did. You learn from the school of Yahusha. And you will work like Yahusha worked. But this system, this academic system, does not come from the scriptures per se. This system comes with the Constantine. He is the one. Roman Church is the one that brought about this system of theology, of people getting qualifications, academic qualifications, to qualify them to do the work. Now, in 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1, it says, trustworthy is the word. If a man longs for the position of an overseer, he desires a good thing. An overseer then should be blameless, the husband of first wife, sober, sensible, orderly, kind to strangers, able to teach. Right? Many of Yahuwah's servants had to be approved for them to work in his field. They had to be a people of a certain character. It was the character that counted most. Right? It was the character of the person. Right? So when he is found to be worthy, then he is suitable to go into the work. Verse 3 says, not given to wine, no brawler, but gentle, not quarrelsome, no lover of money. One who rules his own house well, having his children in subjection with all reverence. For if a man does not know how to rule his own house, how shall he look after the assembly of Elohim? You see that? These are the qualities. These are the qualities that are desired for one to become an overseer in the house of Elohim. So the well-ruling of the house reflected on how you would rule the assembly. That must be clear to all of us. Because how can you be able to rule the assembly when you cannot rule your own household? And then verse 6, it continues with the guidelines. Not a new convert, lest he become puffed up with pride and fall into the judgment of the devil. So you don't choose a new convert to become a leader of the congregation. You need to choose people that have got wisdom, that have got experience, that have got knowledge, that have had a walk with Yahuwah. People with testimonies. These are the people that Yah would choose to be the overseers of his congregation. And he should even have a good witness from those who are outside, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. Likewise, attendants or deacons are to be reverent, not double-tongued, not given to much wine, not greedy for filthy gain, holding to the secret of the belief with a clean conscience. And let these also be proved first, then let them serve if they are unreprovable. Then verse 11 says, wives in the same way, reverent, not false accusers, sober, trustworthy in every way. So this is how this the characters of the people that were supposed to lead in these assemblies. There was no academic qualification required here. Right. Verse 12 says, let attendants or deacons be husbands of the first wife, ruling children and their own houses well. For those who have served well as attendants, gaining good standing for themselves and much boldness in the belief that is in Mashayah, Yahusha. So we see the Home Assembly encourages, one of the things that it does is, besides having a leadership that is called, Home Assembly also encourages participatory worship, right? Which you don't find in many churches today. It is only the pastor. The pastor is the one that must come and stand and give people the word, right? But in the Home Assembly, leadership in the Home Assembly is not a singular man. There is plurality of leadership. The Home Assembly is self-governed, is self-governance. No undue influence on scriptural understanding and interpretation is what you would find in these institutionalized religious systems. Here is collective decision making, right? In the Home Assembly, there is collective decision making. And leaders are more advisory rather than executives. But now when you go to a Christian church, the pastor is born again executive. He is treated like you don't know. They would almost want to hold him up. In fact, they do that. They lift their pastors up. They don't want them to walk. They are regarded as demigods. But you don't find that kind of thing in the Home Assembly. Because these people, they know that they are just equal. They are all servants of the Most High. But people take out their roles according to their calling. And your role is not superior to another role. That's how they understand it in the Home Assembly. Lots of Home Assemblies means effective evangelism. Study and worship all participate, and there is less of preaching in the Home Assemblies. It must be more of study. Right? Thus the assembly becomes wide open, spontaneous, allowing Yahusha to move by his spirit in all the members. But when you go to institutionalized religious systems, it's not the spirit of Yahusha that is being allowed to move. They've got programs that are timed. Right? If Sabbath school is supposed to end at this time, then it must end. Even if the Spirit was giving people wisdom and light, it's time up, let's stop it. So they have got the capacity to control even the working of the Spirit. In the Home Assembly, that does not happen. We are not saying they do not have programs, they have programs. But as long as an issue still needs to be thrashed, people have got the whole day to do that. Let that issue be thrashed. If it means that now we are not going to go into the next program, we will have to pray for this issue to be resolved. People are going to spend another hour praying so that this issue may be resolved. That is allowing the Spirit to work in your midst. But in institutionalized religious systems, that will never happen. It will never work because they are pressed for time. There is a divine service that must come at 11 o'clock. And you cannot miss that time at 11 o'clock. Where do they find that in the scriptures?
Remember I was saying issues pertaining to the church, it's not a place that things are done haphazardly, or where one claims to be in spirit and probably press others for continuously preaching the whole day and says the Spirit is pushing you. There are a lot of people, and we need to have all the programs covered for the day. Otherwise, we end up not covering all other, because we're in a church setup. We're not only going to share the weight. There are other things that we share pertaining to our own lives, how we survive. We share a lot of things that are expected of a Christian person. To say, how do you live? Those things, how do you relate to one another? So those things, how do you relate to one another? There are different lesson plans. Also, we are different age groups. We've got children, we've got elderly, we've got married, we've got unmarried. We cannot bombard all these people with one message because their needs are different.
No, we are not saying bombard them with one message. I don't think that's what I'm saying. I am saying when the Spirit is still leading you to deal with an issue, you don't stop doing that because you are praised for the time of the next program. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying your programs are bad or what. I'm saying allow the Spirit of Yahusha to work. We cannot constrain the working of the Spirit. Because remember, that's why we are saying we need to go back to the ancient way of worship. Because this system that you find in Christianity is not the same as what happened in the early assembly. we are never told that they had fixed the programs whereby they were moving from this to that to that. We know that they worshipped. And the worship was determined by the movement of the Spirit in their midst. Now, because there's no Spirit in the church, people devise their own programs, and they are bound by those programs, even if Yah wants to bring in a certain message to them. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
So but if you want to keep your programs, you can keep your programs. But in the home assembly now, I'm talking about the experience of the home assembly. They have a program, yes, certainly. The home assembly will have its own program, but that program does not determine what is going to happen in the worship of the day. If you had a program that you wanted to say have a study at such a time, but something pressing comes up that needs to be attended, then the home assembly does not say, no, wait for this one, we are going to the next program. They don't work like that. They work as the Spirit is leading them. We can devise our own things plan our own things in the day. But when Yah comes, He has got another plan for us. What do we do when we recognize that Yahweh is leading us this direction? Are we going to say, stop leading us in that direction? We want to pursue this direction according to the structure of our program. Are we going to do that? The home assembly does not work like that. It allows the Spirit in all members in a controlled way. Because remember, the Spirit of Yahweh is not a spirit of confusion. Or a spirit of disorderliness. It's not. Once you see that is happening in your midst, then you know that the devil is at work. When the Spirit of Yah is working amongst His people, there's order. There is no confusion. As you respond to the promptings of the Spirit, you realize that you are being elevated into another level. Right? And Yah will start to give you more light pertaining to the issues that you might be having problems with. That is what is called allowing the Spirit to work through the members. There is less control as it is like in these institutional churches that operate according to prescribed programs. These prescribed programs control the work of the Spirit in the members. It is impossible to do participatory worship in a big gathering. Say you have got 500 people, 1,000 people, 4,000 people. How do you conduct a participatory worship in such a setup? You won't. It must be the man who is there alone, who is going to talk, and all of you listen, then you cry, then you blabber and tatter in tongues, and then you say, we have had a good day of worship. So the other thing that I want to highlight is in the home assembly, we are one another's ministry. What do I mean by that? In home assemblies, you encourage each one to be a minister for another. Scripture says we are each other's keeper. It is easier to maintain discipline, friendship in a small group like a home assembly. Because of the sheer numbers, you can actually maintain discipline and the friendship at the same time. Children in that group in the home assembly learn from their adults. In big churches where most people are relatively strangers, they are less likely to achieve these goals. Again, it comes to numbers. It comes to numbers. Numbers are difficult to manage. When it comes to these spiritual issues that need micromanagement, because you need to dwell on these issues as close as you can. But when you are such a big group, it's not easy to do that. Even to manage the children, you cannot control them on a Sabbath day. It becomes a bit difficult when they are many. You've got 50, 60 children coming together. Sometimes it becomes a bit problematic to manage that kind of a group of children. And then one of the things is as I get closer to the end, one of the things in the home assembly is there is consensus in decision making. Home assemblies have plurality of leadership, clearly identified as elders, teachers, pastors, overseers. Yet these leaders lead more by example and persuasion rather than by command from the headquarters. But in these Christian churches, like there is a place where the command comes from, and you need to toe that line. Whereas in the home assembly, the leadership must make the home assembly see the direction they are leading the assembly. Right? So you don't kind of impose your leadership style on the people or your leadership views on the people. No. You persuade people to see how you want to lead them. And when they've bought in what you are proposing and what you want to bring about, then we all together follow that, and then it becomes our own thing. Whereas with the institutionalized religious systems, there must be a command that comes from the headquarters, and it must filter down to the church, to the member. Now, that structure of leadership is master and servant style of leadership. Yet in this assembly, home assembly, there is only one master, Yahusha. He is the source of command. And the rest of us, we are brethren, with each one with their roles to play. So when you are in leadership, you are a servant leader. You are not a commanding leader. You are a servant leader. That is what is expected in the home assembly. So achieving consensus in home assemblies is easier and possible because people know each other and they bear with one another and are committed to each other as a close-knit family. So if you sit down to discuss issues, you are not going to wrestle and battle as you would do if you were 200 people trying to discuss any issue and come to a consensus. You know, unlike when you are 15 or you are 10, 20 people, you know, it's easier that way when you are a smaller number like that to actually come to discuss issues. And if you are fueled by the Spirit of Yahweh, there is no challenge at all for you to come to some consensus of some sort, being guided by the scriptures themselves. Because you appreciate that smaller groups like that, in most cases, scriptural doctrine, as far as that is concerned, they are most likely at one page, most of them. There could be one or two who may be lagging behind, but you find that the bulk of the people in the assembly, as far as the doctrine of the truth, they are nearly at the same level. So you find they all keep the festivals. They all believe in Father and Son. There's no Trinity in them. They all believe in the set-apart names of the Most High. These are the tenets that guide them in their worship. So they do not have any differences, major differences as far as true worship is concerned. And once they are at one ment, as far as true worship is concerned, then it means that they will become one as well, as far as their relationship is concerned. So in home assembly, there is multiplication and resources allocation. Home assemblies are low cost. Thus, more resources are available for evangelism. Home assemblies, just like the early assembly of the apostles, is destined to turn the world upside down through the evangelism via home assemblies. The home assembly is the only organ that can survive in these times of force of conscience, when all our liberties are being stripped off. So I would say it's time that we go back to the early assembly that was established by the apostles. Because that's what scripture says. It says the apostles are the foundation, right, of this truth that we believe in. And so the early assembly, when you go to the book of Revelations, you see that even the new Yarushalayim is built upon also the same very foundations that Yahusha set up, which are his apostles. The gates into the city, that the tribes of Yahshua are. So, beloved, that's where we need to be going back to. That's the setup that Yahuwah is designed for us. This is the system or the setup in which we are going to be translated from this kingdom in which Ashatan is the ruler into the kingdom, eternal kingdom of Yahuwah that is soon, very soon, to be set up, to manifest on this earth. May Ababaya Baraka us. Now we can discuss the issues that you said. Let's discuss on the questions that we have and your inputs that you have. Can we discuss that now?
Okay. Yeah, I think you can. I think the questions that we posed before the break, maybe, yeah.
What were the questions?
To say, what is wrong with the church that we have now, the building?
We've already covered that, haven't we? The instructions that we have, we are to follow. You see, what I said is, we are to follow the instructions that are given in Scripture. If we are deviating from the instructions that were there, the setup that was there, the home assembly that was there, is the true structure of worship that Yahuwah wants his people to fall into. The problem with the one that we have, it originates from paganism. That's what I said. It's coming from Rome. This structure of worship that we have is coming from the Roman Empire, pagan Rome. That's where it originates from, Roman Catholicism. So that is what is wrong with it. It's not in Scripture. That's what is wrong with it.
Okay.
We are supposed to follow the examples of the Scriptures, I believe. We are supposed to follow the examples of the Scriptures. In the Scriptures, we don't have all these institutionalized systems of religion. And by the way, if you look, that is why there is so much variance amongst the Christians. In fact, in their systems of belief, it's because everyone has adopted their own thing, which is out of the Scriptures. But if we all could follow what is in the Scriptures, then we all would be at one place and will be practicing the same thing. There will be no variance in our midst. But because someone wants to do this and that, and you know, like the current system that you have, maybe let me give an example with the system that you have in the SDA. It's more like a business system. Their focus is much in making the money, right? And all the money going to the United States of America, rather than the money remaining at the place where it's supposed to, if it is supposed to do the work of Yahuwah. And like I said, it's more like master and the servant. The way your pastor is treated in your system, it's like he is a demigod. It's exactly the very things that are happening in any other Christian church are also happening in your religious system. So there is no servant leadership, but there is a master leadership. So that is what is wrong with that kind of a setup. And one of the things that do happen there is that you cannot think outside the box of the SDA or of any other church for that matter. You are not allowed to think outside that box. If you think outside that box and they show them from Scripture that this is what the Scripture is saying, you are out. Realize that? So that's what's wrong with these institutionalized religions. And anyway, these are companies, these are businesses. I don't want to worship in a business. I want to worship Yahuwah in spirit and in truth.
Okay.
Yes. Anything more?
Yeah. I think maybe you touched on it a little bit when you were responding on the question of the temple. I previously inquired to say you were assisted by the quoting scripture in the New Testament, which shows the organization in house assemblies.
Yes.
But can you give more from also the Old Testament? And that also when we are explaining this concept of home assembly.
No, we don't have more. We don't have much more than the ones that I've given in the Old Testament. Because like I said, in the Old Testament, it was a call family by family. That's what we observe. Worship was conducted in the families that were called by Yahuwah. But when you look, after that, we've got Mount Sinai, and then we've got a system that is there. That system becomes irrelevant, or it is superseded by the new system in the early assembly in the New Testament. So if anyone would want to go back to the Old Testament system of worship, it becomes irrelevant because we have got a command that is saying the old system of sacrifices conducted in that temple have ceased. And so we are in a new system of worship, which is the one that Yahusha ushered in through his apostles. So the old system can never be any issue that should arise, especially when we have got a clear instruction from Yahusha himself saying, your house is left to you desolate. And he says to the woman, there is no need for a place to worship. But those that worship Yahuwah will worship him in spirit and in truth. And scripture has made it abundantly clear that the temple now is not a physical place somewhere, but it is your body, because in your body dwells the Father and the Son. So that's the distinction there. So we are following this fulfillment of the types that we find in the Old Testament. So the Old Testament had the types which find their fulfillment in Yahusha. Then we are now worshiping under the priesthood of Yahusha, which priesthood has got these instructions which we see taking place in the early assembly in the New Testament. I don't know whether I've answered that.
Okay.
If it's not good enough, we will pray that maybe the Father give us a good enough answer for that.
Okay. No one. I think just the nature of data.
Yeah.
I also, as you were speaking, I was also thinking about the model that was used even during the times of William Miller, Ellen White, for instance.
Yes.
If you can comment on that, are there instances where they talk about a church building? Most of the instances also allude to the home environment or the home assembly.
Yeah, from what I know, how the SDA started, it started in the home assemblies. They were meeting in homes. But when the structure came, the structure or the leadership structure, which more often than not contradicted with the setup that is found in the scriptures. When it came in, that's when the establishment had to start. And at one time, they were even almost like forced to become like the rest of the other Christian churches, because they were considered to be a cult. And so they had to forego some of the things that they were doing or practicing so that they can fit into this Christian system of worship. So, and then when you read Adventist literature, it's very clear that at the end of the time, they are resorting to the same home assembly system that they started with, which the early assembly also started with. So most of the people actually, they don't know the literature in their church.
No, we know the literatures. We do have those cell groups where the church members, wherever they are staying, we've got cell groups. People are encouraged to meet during the week in cell groups. On Sabbath, it's not a day for going and start to. It's just a fellowshipping. It's not like when you worship, you need to study in the cell groups, share in the cell groups, know each other in the cell groups, relate in the cell groups. I don't know, a church is just only for fellowshipping, but otherwise the actual study should take place everywhere and in the cell groups where people meet as families. And trust is still there.
Yeah, that's how it should be. Actually,
because that's like what you are saying, to say they say at the end that's how it is going to be like, because we're not going to be able to cut.
yeah. So that's why we are saying the time has come to restore the ancient way of worship. Because if you believe that at the end, that's how it is going to be like, then obviously the people that are moving with the times, moving with the spirit, right now as we speak, they've already started, they've already established the home assembly. In fact, the home assemblies started way back. The early 2000s, there was quite a number of home assemblies in the early 2000s. And so the reason why they are going back there, because that's the system that was there from the beginning. As we have seen from the scriptures. That's the system that was there from the beginning. And the Yahuwah system does not change because of our development. Because we've become so civilized now. So the system of worship changes because of that. It doesn't work like that. Yahuwah's system remains as is. It doesn't get bad. Yahuwah never designs anything that is bad. Right? No, he doesn't.
Yeah, but I think like what you're saying, I don't think the church has always been an advocate of what is happening now. Probably it has just been infiltrated by people who have got their own agenda and is slowly drifting towards what they want. But it has always been built on those principles of home assemblies. And as you are saying, if you refer to the old literature, it was really one line, and probably the church has been forced to formalize because it was labeled as a cult, to say if you are really people who are worshiping, you need to do it this way.
Yes.
As a modern system of worship. That's the reason I was like asking to say, do you think the Father is still speaking to us? Because it is maybe upon that premise to say, as he was speaking to the people of the old, he's also still speaking to us, and these are the new revelations that we are receiving, that we must work like this. So it becomes a bit difficult there to say, okay, as he was speaking then, he's still speaking even now.
Yes.
Yeah, and of course, the scripture says, if they speak not according to this way, there's no truth in them. But sometimes it's difficult to tell. It needs a serious prayer and fasting to see that this is not true. Because truth and error, the difference is very small.
Yes.
Very small, yeah.
Yeah. You see, the deceptive error, the best deceptive error must be as close to the truth as possible.
So yeah, so I want to find also what's your take on the technology?
You want me to get bashed with the people now? We are using technology to preach this, and then you want me to say it's satanic.
Because in a home assembly, you need to be together, like as a family, like what you say.
Yeah. Then technology falls away. Actually, this technology that we are having, it falls away. It becomes irrelevant.
Okay, but we can still utilize it to as a family. We can be together even if you are in different places.
Yeah, in the interim, yes. But where we are going, we might have to be forced to throw away these gadgets. Yeah, where we are going, we might be forced to throw them away. And anyway, not might, we will certainly be forced to throw them away. Because this is one of the tools that the beast system is going to use to oppress people, to force people. And therefore, when we are in Yah, I think we have to shed ourselves of this technology. A lot of this stuff that we call technology will fall away. It becomes useless to us. Just like money will become useless to us. It's very difficult when I talk to people about money. They can't imagine that they are going to survive without money. But if you don't want the mark of the, if you don't want to get the mark of the beast, then you will not use money. Right? Does that make sense? If you don't want to get the mark of the beast, then you are not going to use money. So as far as money is concerned, I know very well in my heart that I'd better have no attachment to money, because it's not going to be part of my survival. Very difficult for a rich man to do. Even a poor man. So we need to pray about these issues, and we need to understand what is coming to the world. If we do not have the correct perspective, the true understanding of how these events are going to unfold, hey, we might get lost just because of our attachment to the world and its things. So yeah, my message to you is that start building these, and you said you've got cell groups, which is good. Start building on these cell groups and study the scriptures together, and you will see that if you are going to be faithful in the programs of these cell groups, you are going to see that a lot of truth is going to come to you, and Yahuwah will make you see more truth, and you are going to grow spiritually. And you would want to be at the cell group more than to be at a congregation where there are 200, 300, 500 people. And you are going to see that you become close. You become like a close-knit family together in that cell group. And if there are messages that revive people in the cell group, you will soon realize that people want to be at the cell group almost like daily. Yeah. So you must pray that the Father pours His Spirit in your cell groups so that this truth can move and the people may be revived. And when they are revived, then there is a transformation. There is a reformation in them, in all of us. Because what we need is the truth, and it is the truth that brings revival and reformation unto us.
Yeah, true. I don't know if this is still, I see it's 9 o'clock now.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I need to go into my next program now. We are going into a prayer. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So I want to thank you, beloved, for offering me a home assembly. And I pray that you may have time so that we can have home assemblies together every Sabbath, so that you also help me in this distribution of the Besora, because with you I find that we cover more ground. You question things, and there's need for things to be elaborated. And if I can explain them, I will do that to the best of my knowledge. If I fail to explain them satisfactorily, then Yah will give us a revelation as we go forward. And I believe that if we are going to continue studying like this, I think it's going to be not only beneficial to us as the students, but it's also going to be beneficial even to the listeners as well. Because some of the questions that you raise are the questions that people have, and they do not ask, and we cannot converse with the people online. But now when you ask those questions, then you are asking them on behalf of all the other brethren that are also listening.
That's fine.
May Ababaya be with us, and enjoy the rest of the Sabbath. Nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Until we meet again.
Yes. Goodbye.